How's it going, everyone? It's K-Limited here, and today we are going to be talking about the game that inspired so many roguelites, so many roguelikes, the original Rogue video game. Now, this game, first of all, is old. It is very old. It is definitely outdated. I wouldn't say that this game has aged very well. However, I still think it's a cool part of video game history that was interesting to go back and look at. And I can definitely see how people back in the day got addicted to this game, especially because of how random this game is. And that is what has fueled so many roguelikes and roguelite games that you see today. It's that randomness. It's never knowing what type of dungeon you're going to get. It's never knowing what type of enemies are going to pop up. It's that style of just random generation that makes this genre popular, and this is the game that pioneered that genre. Now, like I said, this game is not very good looking. It's not very. It doesn't hold up very well. In terms of its graphics, it doesn't have many graphics. You're basically playing on a black screen, and your character is a little smiley face looking guy on the center of the screen, and you're moving him around this dungeon. And the enemies don't really have any actual sprites. The enemies are just like letters. That's all the enemies are. So, for example, if you see like an orc, you'll just see a letter O. And when you can go up to it and it'll say that you initiated combat with an orc at the top of the screen. And basically, it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, how you roll dice. You know, it's kind of like that randomness of whether you're going to hit or not, basically on just random numbers. It's all RNG. So, like, you're just trying to get lucky and get hits in on the enemies using just this turn-based combat that is set up in the game. Basically, you'll take a hit, they'll take a hit, you'll take a hit, they'll take a hit. It's just back and forth like that. It's essentially a turn-based dungeon-crawling video game, with every dungeon being completely random. And that's the biggest thing about this game, is that every dungeon is completely different than the last. So even whenever you're starting up a game, no game will be like the last. You're starting up in a dungeon, you're exploring the dungeon, you're finding different rooms of it, you are finding different enemies in it, you're trying to find potions, you're trying to find gold. Gold goes towards your like high score, it goes towards that like actual leaderboard, so you want to try to get as much gold as you can. And you are trying to survive as long as you can too. You're trying to get through as many floors as possible. And that is not easy to do because, like I said, that RNG can be pretty tough at times, and you never know what's going to be in one of these rooms. Like, there's some rooms in these dungeons that are absolutely just filled to the brim with enemies, and it's essentially a death trap. So there's some difficulty there, and it's definitely hard to get very far in this game, especially because it's not like this game is something that you can just keep continuing on, right? There's permadeath in this game. So if you die, you start over from the beginning with a brand new character. And if you do die, it will give you a little gravestone and it will say, here lies your character, whatever. And then that will go on to the leaderboards. It'll keep track of the leaderboards that way. So that makes it kind of feel like an arcade game in a way, which I'm fine with. I like arcade games. It's just that this is definitely a more in-depth arcade game because of all that random generation that this game has, and the exploration is honestly, like, even though it's not graphically intense, everything kind of looks the same, it's still fun to actually explore the rooms. I will give it credit where credit is due. Not knowing what's going to be in the next room is kind of exciting, and it's always fun whenever you actually find something that you can use, whether it's new armor or a new sword, new weapon, whatever it is. It's always exciting to find that stuff. It's always exciting to find potions and scrolls, too, that you can use. And the cool thing about them is that, just like in Dungeons and Dragons, sometimes you'll find a potion and you're not going to know what it is, unless you have like an identify scroll where you can identify the actual thing before you use it. But if you don't have an identify scroll, then you just have to say, for example, if it's like just a random potion, you don't have an identify scroll, you're just going to have to test it and see what happens. And it's kind of fun to do that and just never know what's going to happen, Sometimes it messes with your controls and it makes your character all loopy, and your character will like move different directions, even though you're pressing like, the arrow keys in the certain ways. It will completely do the opposite. You'll skip steps. It will do a bunch of weird stuff like that. There's some potions that will actually make your character stronger. There's some potions that will make it so you're blind. And that's a pretty interesting mechanic. It just says darkness falls upon you, and you can really only see like one step ahead of you every single time you're stepping. So that's kind of an interesting thing too. But I like the randomness of it. I like not knowing what's going to happen when I take one of these potions. I like not knowing what's going to happen when I read one of these scrolls and just seeing the weird random effects of it. I like the different booby traps that you can run across. You know, there's some booby traps that are simple where it just shoots an arrow at you. There's some booby traps that will teleport you to a different room completely, and you you may be teleported into a room that has a bunch of enemies in it. So I like all that different stuff. You know, yes, it is an older game. Yes, the graphics are not fantastic for what they are. It's just plain. I wouldn't say even that the graphics are bad. It's just plain for what it is. The biggest negative for me, honestly, comes down to the controls, because there's a lot of different macros that you need to know and learn to play this game, and not everyone is going to want to do that, and I completely understand. But if you do take the time to learn the macros, learn the controls, and figure everything out, you actually have a pretty in-depth, fun little experience here. And while it may not be, you know, as great as some of the newer games coming out, it definitely may not look as good as a lot of the newer stuff. It actually, you can still get some fun out of it. Like, it's still a pretty fun game. It's just definitely dated by today's standards, you know? I don't think this is a bad game at all. You can really understand why it's so exciting. You can understand why people liked it back then, and you can even understand why so many games took inspiration from it, because there's just something exciting about never knowing what's going to happen in your next playthrough. There's something exciting about, oh, even if you know, get killed, it's not the end of the adventure, because then whenever you start it up, you're going to have a brand new adventure that's completely different than the others. So there's a lot of good here, and I really do enjoy a lot of what is here. The biggest negative is just learning those macros, and probably the fact that there is hardly any sound. Like, there is a huge lack of sound in this game. Every now and then you might hear like a little like Atari noise. You know, like how some of the Atari games used to make certain noises, but it's like once every 20 minutes you may hear it. It's very few and far between when I heard any noises in this game. So yeah, the lack of noise is a little bit annoying. And since this is put on modern hardware, I feel like they probably could have just put like some music behind it or something, you know, put some fantasy music behind it. If they did something even as simple as just putting the music that's in the trailer, like you can go to the Steam page and see the trailer, even if they just put the music that's in that trailer as background music for the game, I feel like that actually would have helped it a lot. If you're someone who's interested in the history of video games and you're looking to see what inspired so many different roguelite and roguelike games, then honestly, I think it's worth checking out, especially because this is only like a $3 game on Steam, so why not go ahead, check it out, see it for yourself, and see where all of these games got their inspiration from. It's cool to see. It really is, and I'm glad that I played it. You know, it's not going to become my favorite game ever made, don't get me wrong. It's not something that I would recommend to people who are looking for a super fun, addictive game or anything like that, but it's something that I would recommend to other people who are interested in video game history. If you're interested in the history of video games, this is a cool experience. This is something that's fun to do. For the casual, I would never recommend something like this, but if you're watching this, you're probably interested in video game history. You're probably interested in where a lot of these games came from, and I recommend trying it out if you are interested in that sort of stuff. So go check it out. For $3, it's definitely worth a try. And worst comes to worst, you spent $3 on it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.